Do you believe in life after love? Dum dum. I can feel something inside me say. But technically, religion isn't really one of them. Yeah, so we've spoken about white supremacy, we've spoken about capitalism, we've spoken about slut shaming. Yes, we are now on to theological fundamentalism, also religious intolerance, and yeah, the world is filled with so many religions, and saying that this prompt actually is more of a personalized one with regards you reading a book that has a character in a religion that is different from yours, I figured it only makes logical sense in a way, for me to, rather than just give some religions more recommendations than others, I went out in search of 20 religions. Yes, you heard that right. 20 religions, and there is a book recommendation for each of them. Okay, so before I kick off my recommendations for the theological fundamentalism prompt, I would like to state that I have an update on the Book of the Month scenario that would be coming up at the end of this video. So just want to put that out there. We'll kick things off with the very first book on the list, which is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. To be honest, when I was thinking Islam and I was like, oh, what book could I pick? There were so many, that popped to mind. I could have picked Once Upon an Eid, Loves and Lies of Roxana Ali. I could have picked Love from A to Z, Internment. There are so many books, to choose from. But the Daevabad trilogy, City of Brass, is fantasy bay. Like, do you want a book inspired by Middle Eastern mythology? One that has lies and scheming and manipulation and backstabbing and lots of courtly intrigue, with a warrior that is tortured by the centuries of the brutality he perpetrated whilst he was imprisoned, all the whilst lamenting that said warrior doesn't seem to learn anything in all the centuries that he's been alive? Do you want a series that is headed by a con artist who becomes royalty, who becomes a bird in a gilded cage, only to find, her agency at the end of the second book and leave us wailing at the way in which it ended because we had to wait a whole year to get the last book in the trilogy, which luckily for you is now out. So yeah, consider picking up City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty if you've not read it already. Like I said, it is inspired by Middle Eastern mythology, and the world of Daevabad is one that is rich with different cultures and different religions. These characters practice different religions, but one of the main characters is a Muslim in this book. And yeah, like I said, I really do love the series. Also, I'm sorry I'm putting up the UK cover because the UK cover is gorgeous. Next is The Epic Crush of Jeannie by F.C. Yee. Now, I am a lover of all things myth and legend. I'm not going to hide that. I wear that with a badge of pride. I love them. I love myths, I love legends, and I love the various reiterations of them that exist. And one of my favorite myths is Wu Chengen's Journey to the West. Yes, because I absolutely adore Sun Wukong. I absolutely adore this trickster god, Monkey King, whose entire character arc sees him on this journey from this brash, impatient, short-tempered, ignorant being to becoming the benevolent, enlightened person he is at the end of the story, at the end of the journey. And you realize, or rather you recall, that Buddha himself was the one that defeated Sun Wukong the first time and sent him hurtling to earth, and basically chopped a mountain on him. Yeah, interesting. Like, this entire story is humorous and has so many things to teach with regards man's lifelong journey to find enlightenment. I really do enjoy it. Like, if you have access to it somewhere, you should totally check out Journey to the West. But if you don't and you have The Epic Crush of Jeannie, you should read that instead, because I repeat, I adore this book. It's absolutely marvelous. It's, like I said, a retelling of Journey to the West. So you do see legendary figures from Buddhist myth show up all throughout this book and eventually all throughout the series. I cannot wait to pick up Iron Will of Jeannie. Like, I have had that book in my sights ever since it got released. I cannot wait to dive into it. But yes, if it is that you've not read it, you should totally pick it up. If anything, so you can spend the first book trying to see if you can correctly guess exactly what reincarnated form Jeannie is herself, because my mind was blown. I did not see it coming. That is like, it's rare for me to be that surprised. It's rare for me not to see things like that coming. And I was just like, SCE, you got me. You got me, boo. You got me. Now, if you're a fan of comics, to be precise, X-Men, I would suggest X-Men, Magneto's Testament, Volume 1 to 5, by Greg Pak and Carmine Giandomenico. Now, like I said, I love X-Men. I absolutely do love what it is that the comics represented, the deeper stories they told, the symbolism of their existence, and this struggle, right? This fight between the philosophy of Professor X, of Charles Xavier, and the philosophy of Magneto. Because on one hand, I do see where Professor X is coming from. I totally see where Charles is coming from. But on the other hand, when you're tired of your people being constantly oppressed for what it is that makes them different, and you realize that attempting civility never really works, at least it's not a long-term solution, then you start to understand where Magneto is coming from. And this is further cemented when it is that you get an understanding of his origin story, because Magneto is Jewish and he is the sole Holocaust survivor of his family. Now, if it is that you've not read Magneto's origin story, then maybe consider picking up Magneto's Testament, because the artwork is also absolutely gorgeous. If it is that you already know his story, but not the details of it, more like a passing mention or summary, then you might also consider picking it up. It's just 5 volumes, and it's a great insight into the psyche of an X-Men that I've always admired and always wanted to know more about, and we get it with Magneto's Testament. So yeah, that's the third book on the list. Now, there are not a lot of Nigerian LGBTQ plus stories out there. I live in a very homophobic country where people live to police other people's sexuality using the twin excuse of culture and religion. Now, a lot of some writers have set out to debunk this myth, this story that we tell ourselves as a society that, oh, it's not in our culture to be gay, because there have been historians who have done the research and provided proof that technically it kind of is. Now, that is culture. When it comes to religion, things get a bit more dicey and a bit more tricky, because Nigeria is a very religious country. I think we're the second religious country in the ranking. We're the second most religious country in the world. So very religious, very hypocritically religious. Let me add that, because there are also quite a lot of hypocrites. And that is the setting that Chinelo Oparanta sets up or puts together for her novel Under the Budala Tree, where we follow our protagonist, Ijoma, a gay girl who is growing up in the wake of the Nigerian Civil War. She lost her father in the war, not that he was a soldier, but due to a depression that he suffered whilst the war was ongoing. So she grows up in the aftermath of that, and whilst doing so, she also comes to a realization that she romantically and sexually is attracted to women. And now she has to deal with the burden that this places on her, existing and living in a society that would seek to have her fit into their definition of who she's meant to be and what her sexuality is meant to be. And this book is beautiful and heartbreaking and painful. So painful. Trigger warning for death, a depiction of death on page. Trigger warning for suicide ideation, trigger warning for abuse, physical abuse, and attempted sexual abuse, trigger warning for a lot of slurs, because I repeat, this is set in a very homophobic country, trigger warning for a lot of things. But this book is also very honest. And when Ijoma has a conversation with her Christian mother, a very religious Christian mother who tries to use the Bible to silence Ijoma and her identity as a gay woman, and Ijoma pushes back, that was very satisfying. You can tell that Chinelo set out in her book to address religion and Christianity and the Bible and the place that queer people, where they fit into that, how exactly they have to find and carve their own identity and carve a personal relationship that is not based on the baggage and the weight of societal's interpretation to the intention of the biblical God that they serve. And I think she did a fairly good job with it. Like I said, yeah. Chinelo Quaranta under the Udala tree. Next on the list is Heretics Anonymous. Yes, Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. Now, what happens when you have an atheist, a pagan, a gay Jewish boy, a girl who wants to become a priest, not a nun, but a priest, and a Unitarian? What happens when you bring them together in a private Catholic school? The 5 of them come together to form a friendship and a bond. It's a beautiful, amazing story, brilliantly told, with themes of friendship and tolerance and speaking out against a system that would rather have you stay silent and behave and just accept the status quo. If you like your books coming with both religious and non-religious characters together, mutually understanding and mutually accepting their differences and mutually being accepting of their individual religions, if you love a book like that, that's one that is also chock full of humor, then Heretics Anonymous might just be something you want to consider. Maybe consider it. Consider it. Next book on the list is The Secret Journal of Brett Colton by Kayleen Mangum. Now, I'm going to start this off by stating that I have not read this book yet, but I do love the premise of the story. And in this story, we follow Kathy Colton, who grew up in the shadow of her brother, a dead brother who died of leukemia at age 17. Kathy was 2 years at the time, and she's had all her life had to deal with growing up in someone else's shadows, where none of her own accomplishments are celebrated by the family that is so fixated on that loss. And when she's asked to tutor Jason West, high school quarterback and Mormon, she is mortified. But when an embarrassing occurrence on her 16th birthday has her running back home, her parents hand her a letter from her brother Brett, who wrote a letter and wrote a journal to be given to her on her 16th birthday. And within the pages of this journal are all his thoughts and all his feelings he was writing to her the minute he found out that he was going to die. And in the pages of this journal, Kathy discovers more about this brother that she never knew and discovers more about herself as well. And of course, we know that this book is also going to have a relationship between herself and Jason West, star quarterback and Mormon. And I'm actually pretty intrigued with regards how that would work out, because apparently part of the embarrassing situation that she faced was courtesy of Jason. So yeah, it sounds like it is going to, it's giving me 90210 vibes, and I really loved that show. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to eventually get to this book and hopefully enjoy it. We're keeping our fingers crossed in this house. I have read way too many disappointing books that I was really excited to get to. So just fingers crossed that this book is not a disappointment. If you've read it, just drop it down in the comments down below. Let me know what your rating was. But I'm hopeful. The next book on this list is 1,000 Endings and Beginning, which was edited by Ellen O and Ellis Chapman. Now, I read this book last year for the Asian Readathon. It was our group book, and I absolutely love it because this is a short story, a collection of stories that are inspired by Asian myth and legends. And I think I already stated earlier when we we're talking about the Epic Crush of Jeannie that legends and myth are my kryptonite. They are my bread and butter. They are the sugar in my tea. And your girl has a sweet tooth. I love me a lot of sugar in my tea. Like, just imagine putting in imagine taking tea without sugar. It can never be me. I sincerely hope it's never me, because that would be a very, very sad life. But yes, I love myth and I love legends, and A Thousand Beginnings and Endings has that. It's a collection of 16 short stories, all inspired across the continent. And like in this, we have the Mahabharata, a retelling of the Mahabharata, told in this almost dreamlike sequence that I found very slightly psychedelic. It took a while for me to get it, but I did enjoy it. And then there's a favorite of mine, which takes place during Navaratri, which tells us the story on one hand of Jaya and her friends, and them kicking against the patriarchal society that would seek to blame them for the actions of an annoying boy, an annoying ass boy. Tells that story, simultaneously tells the story of Durga and her battle with Mahishasur to help restore Dharma. Like, it's a central tale in Hindu myth. So I absolutely adore it. I absolutely adore this book. Like, if you have it and you've not read it, you could just consider picking it up. It's just, so many. There are so many stories. There are 15 stories, 15 or 16. I think it's 15 stories in total. And I'm fairly certain you will find 1 or 2 or 10 that you would enjoy and love. And then there's Chronicles of Tao, The Secret Life of a Taoist Master by Ming Dao Deng. Now, this is yet another book on this list that I haven't read yet, but I absolutely had to include it because, one, it centers Taoism, also referred to as Daoism. And we follow this epic story, right, of a young man's humble beginnings, humble start as the son of wealthy parents living in a peasant Chinese town, who decides to defy his parents' wishes and takes up a Taoist practice. And we follow him surviving the Japanese occupation and surviving the Chinese Revolution, all the way till he relocates to America, where he ends up rising to become a Golden Gloves boxer and eventual martial arts instructor. Like, tell me that is not fascinating. Like, I am fascinated by that story and I want to read it. Next is Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi, which is a reimagined history of Uganda, told through the Kintu clan's cursed bloodline, as Kintu Kida's actions places a curse that would plague his family for generations. And in an epic intergenerational tale, Makumbi shows these characters seeking to reconcile the tradition that they inherited along with the curse that they need to break, whilst attempting to survive in a modern world. It's beautiful, it's poignant, it's powerful, it's sometimes unsettling, but utterly riveting. It's, for me, a perfect pick for the African traditional religions. I'm grouping that because they are like there are so many religions, and I didn't want it to be like, because if we started doing the recommendations for each of these religions, there are a lot of books. Most African countries, right, have so many tribes, and you have religions from each tribe. So, like, if you have a book at home that you know has a character that practices Akom religion or Igbo, like the traditional Igbo religion, or the ancient Egyptian religion, Lingala, like, you can just pick this. So just African traditional religions is just a group for them, and I'm picking Kintu for this because Kintu is amazing. Next up is The Black God's Drums by P. Jelly Clark. Now, I have not yet read this book yet, but when you have an alternate history story set in New Orleans in 1884 with a main character called Creeper. Yes, Creeper. Like, that is an iconic name. Like, when you have a main character called Creeper who is desperate and wants to leave New Orleans and figures that the way for her to get her escape, right, is for her to use a secret of a kidnapped scientist from Haiti to get the captain of a ship to take her on, all the while having a big secret of her own, because you see, Creeper has the goddess Oya, yeah, goddess of storms and winds. That goddess has her in her head, talking to her and imbuing her with powers. So, but Oya has her own plans because she has special interest in the scientists and in the ship captain. Clearly, there's going to be several layers of different interests colliding, and it's going to be explosive. So I have this book. I want this book. I'm going to get this book. I'm going to read this book. Definitely before the end of the year, because it sounds brilliant. Another book that I have not yet read, right? But it's on my list of books to read ASAP, and which still works for this, because, by the way, I forgot to mention that the Black God's Drums works for, I grouped it together as African diaspora religions, whether it's Santeria or Voodun, like the African diaspora religions. If you have any book, that has a character that practices, then that totally works for this prompt. And the next book on the list is a book that, like I said, I have not yet read, but it's also high on my list of books to get, which is Trail of Lightning. Yes, Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. Now, this is a post-apocalyptic story set in Dinate, formerly the Navajo Reservation. And here we follow Maggie, who is a monster hunter who is really, really good at her job. Like, she's really good at killing. And when a girl goes missing, Maggie is called in to help hunt the monster. When she realizes that she's going to need help, she ends up enlisting the help of Kai, unconventional medicine man and resident hottie. I mean, why wouldn't this make the list? It has everything I look for. There's a badass, kick-ass female lead character. We've got monsters up the wazoo. There's going to be a lot of killing and slaying of said monsters, set in a world that is filled with Navajo myths and legends. Like, what is not to... I want this book. I want to read this book. I'm going to read this book. And I think the second book is already out, which, thank the universe. God, it's probably a trilogy, so... That's the thing about trilogies. But anyway, I really am looking forward to reading it. You should consider picking it up if you already have it on your shelf. And I would just like to say, though, that trigger warning for lots of blood, lots of gore, lots of killing. Like, there's a lot of killing in this book. Now, if it is that you want a cute middle grade story with a Sikh protagonist who discovered that she's a hero on her own, and look no further than Super Satya Saves the Day by Reiki Mikadani, where we follow Satya, who is an Indian American girl who is set out to have a marvelous, she has plans for this marvelous day. She's going to conquer the tallest slide in Hoboken, and she's all ready until she hears the news that her cape is still at the dry cleaners, and now she has to discover that she has within herself the power and the ability to save the world. No cape necessary. It's wonderful. It's awesome. If you're in the mood for a middle grade picture book, then you could consider reading this. Like, yeah, Super Satya Saves the Day. Next book on my list. I don't think we can think about Iran, or rather, to be precise, Persia, Asian Persia, without thinking of Zoroastrianism. And when people talk about books that are inspired by Persian culture and myth and legends, I'm always like, why not just go straight to the source? And of course, I mean the Persian Book of Kings by Abulkazem Ferdowsi, translated by Dick Davis, which is a compilation of Persian legends and historical accounts of the absorption of ancient Persia into the rapidly expanding Islamic empire, is the national Persian epic that talks about the creation myth all the way to the Arab invasion of the 7th century. So yeah, it ranks pretty high up there with Homer's Iliad and Dante's Inferno. It's a book I have been dying and meaning to read, and of course it made the list. Now I'm sure I pretty much sound like a broken record at this point, but The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which has shamanism at the core of its center, because we follow a young girl, the love of my life, the apple of my eye, the adoration of my heart. Yes, Fangrunin, who battles classism and racism and colorism to rise to join an elite military academy where she is training in the hopes that her life will change. But then her schooling is interrupted when a war breaks out with devastating effects, a war that is inspired by the real-life Nanking Massacre of 1937, a war that in turn sets of a possession of a god that would rather see the world reduced to fire and ash. It's bloody, it's brutal. Trigger warnings for rape and murder and mutilation and gruesomely descriptive death and addiction. Although I would like to state that none of this were done in a way that is meant to tantalize the audience in any form or way, but rather it serves as a commentary on the horrors of war and the depths of which mankind is capable of sinking to in a war, when it is that they decide to strip the humanity of the people on the other side, the people that they are fighting. I love this book. I adore this book. I have not hidden it anywhere on my channel, on my social media platforms. Like, I have not hidden it anywhere that I absolutely adore this book. So, of course, it makes the list. Like, bonus points that it also is representative of shamanism as a religious practice. So there you go. Now, I've not read the next book on my list. I am waiting for the third book in the series, in the trilogy, to arrive, because word is that it is a book that it's a series I will not be able to put down, and I want the next book immediately. So yeah, I was waiting for that. So I'm of course talking about Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. Yes, we're talking about ancient Japanese myth and legends, and a story that takes place in that time, with a lead character, Yumiko, who is half kitsune and half human, who was raised in this temple, in a remote temple, and when her adopted family are brutally murdered, she sets off away from the temple holding a scroll, a sacred scroll that can summon the great Kami dragon, which automatically means that there are a lot of people on her tail who want that scroll. One of them is samurai and hunter Kage, who, by a twist of fate, runs into Yumiko, and she tells him that, she knows where the scroll is, that he should follow her. And he does, unaware that she has the scroll, and she knows she's hiding this big secret from him, but is her best chance of survival. Like, that layers of secret and drama and angst, and I am ready for it, all wrapped up, I repeat, in this story that is filled with Japanese mythology. What is not to love? What is not to love? I cannot wait to read this book, and I have it on good authority from friends that have read it that this series is the bomb. So I am really, really excited to get to it. Like, I have books 1 and 2. All that is left is Night of the Dragon, and then I would start the series like pronto. Then there is the Hallowed Ones by Laura Bickle. Now, I've not read this book yet either, but get this. It has vampires, and a coming, a rapidly approaching apocalypse, and is set in the Amish community. Yes, the Amish community, where the Amish elders have set a rule that nobody goes in and nobody goes out, because there are things outside the community that are outside. Things are happening outside. So, like, you're not allowed to go outside, not even for Rumspringa, which is the period when Amish teenagers are allowed to step out of the community into the outside world to see what it has to offer for a year and then come back home. Like, they're not even letting the teenagers go out for that. And this would have been the moment for our teenage lead character to step out. And she finds an injured young man and brings him into the community. Horror ensues. This book has my name on it. Like, I don't know about you, but this book has my name on it. And it makes me very happy. Like, extremely, extremely happy. Now, sometimes you want to pick up a serious book that tells you about Norse mythology, the Prose Edda, anybody. Like, sometimes you want the serious books. And then sometimes you just want a book that gives you all the story about the Norse Pantheon, but makes you laugh. And that is where the next book on the list comes in, which is Brathala, Volume 1, by Seth Damus and Anthony Lee. Now, in this, all the Norse Pantheon are teenagers being raised by Odin and Frigga, and they get into the usual shenanigans. I mean, like, you have Thor, who is the runt of the litter but very, very strong. You have Loki, who is still as mischievous and loves to play with dolls. You have Balder, who is pretty and invulnerable. You have Hod, and you have super speedster Hemond. Yes, it is shenanigans galore, right? Set with, amidst, like, trolls showing up and giants showing up and teachers from hell. And I mean that, like, the dimension hell, not a figurative expression. And an eyeball who wants revenge. Yes, an eyeball who wants revenge. It's hilarious. So if you want to learn a bit more about Norse mythology and you want to laugh, you could consider picking it up. And then there's Hounded by Kevin Hearn, which is the first book in the Iron Druid Chronicles. Yes, I just said druids. We are bringing druids into this, people. And, goddamn. Okay. So, the first time my friends told me that, yo, you should read Atticus. You should read a book about Atticus. And I'm like, who is Atticus? And it turns out that Atticus is the last of the druids. He's living in relative peace, you know. He runs an occultic bookshop. He loves to hunt with his wolfhound in his, shape-shifting form. His neighbors think is this Irish gorgeous 23-year-old man, not realizing that he's actually 2,300 years old. Yes. And of course, he has the strength because he keeps drawing strength from the earth. He's a druid, people. He also has a very trusty sword, Fragorak, which one of the old Celtic gods wants and has wanted for a while. You see, he's been hunting Atticus, and Atticus has been on the run. And it's been centuries, but the old Celtic god has finally caught up with Atticus. And so now Atticus needs help, and he enlists the help of a goddess of death, his team of attorneys that is made up of werewolves and vampires, the old bartender who is possessed by a Hindu witch, so that they can all come together to kick some Celtic god ass. Like, tell me that does not sound fucking brilliant. I want that book. I have not gotten my hands on it yet, but the minute it was said, like, my brain was like, yo, that's a book that should have my name on it. Like, I should meet that book and be like, yo, book, here you go, a ring, marry me. I'm gonna make you very happy. Not as happy as you'll make me, but we'll come really, really close. Besides, like, marriage is all about give or take, but we all know that there's never really a 50-50 giving and taking in a marriage, is there? And then the book will be like, bitch, you ramble too much, here you go, I'm gonna marry you. Like, that is, in my head, the relationship, the conversation I had with this book when I asked this book to marry me. So yeah, Hounded. Now, if you want something smaller, like a much smaller story, because I recognize the fact that there are lots of fronts for the FuckAthon. So if you want something much smaller, you could, I don't know, consider picking up Odd Spirits by S.T. Gibson, this little novella that owns me hard body, soul, and spirit, where we follow Moira, who is Black, was raised a Baptist, and is currently a Chaos Witch, and her husband, Reese, who is white and raised a Catholic and is currently a ceremonial magician. And they are dealing with a malevolent spirit that has taken up residence in their home. And the only way which said spirit can be kicked out is for them to resolve the issues, the unsaid issues present within their marriage. So if you're someone that is tired of all this old new relationship type stories and want something with a more established couple, then you might consider picking it up. It's small, it's like I think about 70 pages, so it's a really short novella, but it is absolutely witchy and amazing. Plus there is bisexual rep in this as well, so I always say that. Like, I love this book. I absolutely adore this book. It's the littlest book, but it's so powerful and so amazing. Now, I'm going to start off because I've gotten to the last book on the list, and I'm going to start by saying that this last book is not a work of fiction. And I'm certain you're like, oh, this entire list has been heavily populated with fiction. This last book is not a fictional novel. I tried, but finding works of fiction that did not confuse Satanism with satanic was hard. What's the difference, you wonder? Well, see, Satanism does not believe in the entity Satan. They use the name, the word, as a symbol instead of liberty, of passion, of pride, etc. Right? It's not the Abrahamic biblical Satan as we know it. But when people bring in Satanism into works of fiction, it's usually through a satanic lens of rituals and murder and rape and killing and the devil, and that is not Satanism. So I felt that, like, other than the fact that I couldn't find it, but I also felt that it's sorry for the change in angles if it's obvious. My battery died and I needed to charge my camera. So as I was saying, I figured that because a lot of people probably do not actually know the difference, I figured it's best to go with a non-fiction work, which also works for me because I repeat, I couldn't really necessarily find one with an accurate depiction in fiction. If you know any, drop them down in the comments, please. So, as I was saying, a non-fiction book you can consider looking or checking out is Bearing the Devil's Mark by Matt Paradise, which shares the insights of Satanist views on love and religion and God and politics and sex, etc., etc. Written by a man who has been a Satanist for 25 years. So you know he has knowledge of the Church of Satan and what Satanism as a religion stands for. So yeah, I know the last one is probably going to be a very unpopular, like this last one is probably going to be a very unpopular choice. I'm expecting people to be like, Noria, what the fuck? How the hell are you putting Satanism in this video? But like, it's 20 religions, it's 20 books, and the whole point of the fuck theological fundamentalism or fuck religious intolerance prompt is to recognize the fact that the world is huge and the world is wide and the world is diverse. We live in a richly diverse world, and this diversity also translates to religions. There are so many religions in the world. This is just 20. There are so many out there, and there are so many books and so many form of media that speak to that. So yeah, maybe consider picking up one, changing your thought process, like being able to understand the world from the eyes of someone with a religion that is different from yours. So that is my fuck theological fundamentalism / fuck religious intolerance prompt recommendations video. Let me know which of any of those books you're interested in checking out. Drop them down in the comments down below. If you have any recommendation for like a book that speaks to a particular religion, like maybe a character is heavily involved in it or not, drop them down in the comments down below as well. I'm always interested. Now let's move on to what I mentioned at the start of this video, which is about Book of the Month. I had stated that I don't know if, for those that don't know, something went down earlier this month with Book of the Month, with regards to Book of the Month, whereby a bookstagrammer, black bookstagrammer, I think, called them out, right, and mentioned the fact that their selections are not diverse and it's not really cool, especially when it was that they were tapping into the Black Lives Matter conversation. And the feedback, like the response she got was whoever was on the other side, right, deleted her comments and blocked her. And all of us were like, what the fuck? You cannot be performative with this shit. You cannot be telling us this and then just all of a sudden tap the fuck out. It does not work like that. So, it was unanimous. Yo, why are we still on Book of the Month? We all like, sorry, we're done with you. So, mass cancellation of subscriptions, because it's always good to hit them, especially companies where their pockets are. Even if it is that you cannot be real with your allyship, at least, we're going to make sure that your pocket feels that burn. I canceled my subscription along with everybody else. I had a credit like available in the account, but I canceled because I was just like, no, fuck this shit. But then I didn't know that apparently shortly after that, the CEO of the company released a statement on Instagram that's a Book of the Month. I'm going to leave the link down in the description bar so you can check it out, because I did drop out a poll in my community tab and you are voted and all of that. I did consider and I did come to my decision, which is I looked at the post and I would state that he had actionable plans. I'm someone that like, if we're calling you out on bullshit that you've done, don't just give an apology. I want to see that you're putting in the work. And I appreciated the fact that these things are actionable. Like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And they're actionable. There are things that you can follow up on. So I fully intend to do that. I have resubscribed to Book of the Month. The June selections had two books by authors of color, and there were also queer LGBTQ plus books and one book with the fat character. The other two books were white men. So yeah, but in that case I was like, okay, we had selections. I'm going to see how July pans out. The other part of their comment of the statement was also that they were going to start hiring more diversely. So I am checking them out on LinkedIn. I am looking at their current hire, like their current staff, what the staff looks like, who they are, and then I'm going to be watching carefully to see if they actually do those things, if they actually do hire more diversely like they said they would. And I know a lot of companies, hiring processes, whatever. I am willing to give you like a 6-month extension. So like end of the year, I'm going to go back. I'm going to be looking at your LinkedIn. I'm going to assess where you were at the middle of like the start of this period, which is June. Where are they as a company with regards to their staff and the diversity of their staff, and how are they standing at the end of the year? Don't go bring us one person, or two staff members and be like, yo, my staff is more diverse. It doesn't work like that. So I would be examining carefully by the end of the year, but I just wanted to let you know with regards to that. I just wanted to give an update. So because I know I mentioned that, and I know some of you were asking in my comments like, what's up with Book of the Month? So that was basically what happened, and that's basically the decision I'm taking. But yeah, that is this video. I'm so sorry if you stayed for this long. I'm so thankful. Thank you. But yeah, if you like this video, please do not forget to give it a big thumbs up. Check out my other videos. Subscribe if you want to. And if you do decide to subscribe, please click on that notification bell so you can know the minute I have a new video go up, because I'm behind of all my recommendations. So you all are going to be getting a stream of them over the next couple of days, like probably every day or every other day, because I need to have, my plan is to have this all done this week, like the rest of the recommendations video. And I think that all that is left is fuck ableism, fuck ageism, fuck book elitism, and what else is there? That can be all. Fuck gentrification, right? So yeah, that's all. So I'm going to my plan is to drop either every other day. Some of them will be dropping the next day. So just have my notification on. I make new videos usually every Wednesdays. It used to be Wednesdays and Saturdays, but I think I'm going to drop it Wednesdays, make it Wednesdays and Sundays, because Saturdays are really busy for me of late, and the days leading to it are also very busy for me. So I make new videos every Wednesdays and Sundays, and I will see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself. Bye.